Alright, so today we're doing experiment 4 and we would like to separate an unknown mixture. So here is our unknown mixture, and our unknown mixture is made up of 3 different components, right? So the first one is ammonium chloride, sodium chloride, which is table salt, and then we also have sand. So the goal of today's experiment is to figure out the percentage of each one that make up our sample. So hopefully when we get done with it, when we add up the percentages of each one, we'll be close to 100%. Okay? So that's the goal for today's experiment. Okay, so the first part of the experiment, what we need to do is we need to get the weight of the beaker. Okay, so I'm standing in front of a balance here in the lab, and I'm just going to zero it out, even though it says it's 0, and then I always make sure I tare it, everything is closed. So I'm going to take this 50 ml beaker and I'm going to stick it on that balance, and then I'm going to record that value. So the weight of beaker 1 is going to be 30.006. Okay, so that is what we're going to have right there. Okay, so you can see I have my unknown mixture. And so now what I'm going to do is, it says to get approximately 2 grams of that mixture. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So I've got about 1 gram right now. And it's nothing about being exact. We just need about 2 grams to begin with. So we are close. See if that hardly was wasn't it? Okay. So that's going to give us approximately 2 grams. So I put that in there, and then my reading for the number 2 weight of my beaker and mixture is 32.025. Okay. So that is what I have. So you guys can do the calculations. Alright, so I'm going to take this beaker with my substance in it, and I'm just going to walk, and I'm walking with you here through the lab. Okay. And I'm going to come in here, and I am in a hood. Okay, so this is our hood that we have. Okay, and so I'm going to take this hot plate, okay, that we have right here, and then I am going to plug it in, because nothing works if we don't plug it in. And then I'm going to turn it on, and I'm going to put it on approximately 6. Okay. And I'm going to show you periodically. It does take time. It's like 15-20 minutes. Alright, so I turned it on. I got to make sure I actually turn on the hood as well. I think you can hear it now. We will be subliming the ammonium chloride when we do this, okay? So, I just turned it on, so it's not hot yet. So it's going to take about 15 minutes or so. I'm going to pop back in, and I'm going to let you see the white smoke that comes off, and that white smoke is the sublimation to where you have the ammonium chloride. Right? Okay, so this is what happens when you have your hot plate on, and your hot plate is hot, and you're taking your mixture, and you can see that white smoke coming out of there, and that white smoke is the ammonium chloride. So I'm just going to lift up the hood just slightly, and I'm going to stir it, because I want you to stir it to help get rid of all on the end of my stir rod right here. I'm going to just pull it out of the hood now. Okay. My stir rod has white on the end of it. You see that? And a little bit of yellow. And that's just the sublimation of ammonium chloride. So I'll have to rinse that with water to get all that out as we proceed. Okay, so it's just subliming. So when it gets done subliming, I will show you what it looks like. You can tell now that the ammonium chloride is mainly out of the sample. There's not as much fumes coming off, but you can see around the top of the beaker. Let me try and point that to you. Like, look at that. So right here, you can see that film of whiteness on there. So the ammonium chloride has gotten onto the sides of the beaker. So now we're going to try and cook that off the sides. But the ammonium chloride in the main sample seems to have sublimed. Okay. So we're still waiting. We're doing good. We're making progress. So you notice it was on the edges. So what we typically do is we lay it on the side, and then it gets it off the edges. So we just move the beaker around to get that white film. So if you look at it like that, you can tell the part that's on the hot plate has gotten rid of the ammonium chloride. Okay. So it's getting less and less. Almost done with this first part. So when all the ammonium chloride is out, then what we do is we take it off the hot plate and we put it on some wire gauze. So now it's cooling down so that we can put it on the balance. So we gotta wait about 15 minutes to let it cool down, and then we will put it on the balance for a spin for the measurement. So while we're waiting, we're gonna need a beaker 2 and we're going to need a beaker 3. And just to distinguish between the two, we're going to use 150 for the beaker 2, and then we're going to use the 50 ml for beaker 3. Alright, so we're back at the balance. I'm going to push tear, even though it says 0. I'm going to open it up, and I'm going to stick that beaker 2 right in there. And then I'm going to write 70, and then 0.502 for the weight of my beaker 2. And then I'm going to put my beaker 3, my 50 ml beaker on there, and that one is going to go with position 9 on your lab sheet, and I'm going to have 29.510. Okay, so that's what my lab sheet looks like at the present time. Okay, again, I'm just waiting for that beaker 1 right there. It's resting, it's cooling off. Once it gets cool, I'll get the mass of that. Alright, so now I can touch it. And so now I check my balance. Let's tear it out, it's 0. So I'm going to open it up, and I'm going to stick my beaker 1. And so my mass of beaker 1 of solid after sublimation is 31,853. Alright? And again, it should be less because I sublimed out that ammonium chloride. So theoretically, everything that's left in this beaker right now should be table salt and sand. So how do you want to separate table salt and sand? The thing that you want to do is you want to add water to it. So that's what I have measured out here. I have a graduated cylinder that I put the appropriate amount of water in. I'm going to add that to this beaker. I'm going to stir it around with my glass stirring rod, and then I'm going to filter it. So you'll notice here I put this apparatus together. I just have a ring stand here, okay? And then I have an O-ring with a glass funnel that I have filter paper in. So I've wet that filter paper, and I'm ready to pour my sample through. So I'm going to take this water and I'm going to add it. Okay. And then I'm going to stir. And of course I left my stir rod on this side. Oh no, I didn't. There's my stir rod. Okay. And so I'm going to stir it. And stirring is going to help dissolve any of that salt. And then it tells you to put it on the hot plate for a moment. Get it all nice and hot. So it might dissolve some of that water. Dissolve some of that salt water. Okay, so I'm stirring it around. Okay. And now that I've stirred it, we're going to assume that the salt has dissolved. Now I'm going to take your beaker 2 that we got the mass of and put it underneath this filter, the funnel with the filter paper in it, and I'm going to collect it. So at this point in that first beaker that we have right here, we should have the sand and the salt, and now that we've added water, stirred it, the salt should have dissolved in the water. Okay, so the stuff you see at the bottom should be sand. Okay, so what we want to do now is separate the salt water from the sand, which is why we're going to filter. So we're going to pour this through the filtering paper. Okay, and we're going to let it drip through so you can see how it's dripping through. And then it tells you in your lab to rinse it some more with water. So while that is filtering, I'm going to pour some more water in here. Okay, and then I'm going to stir. Again, trying to get all of that salt to dissolve, just leaving behind the sand. Okay, so I'm going to pour that in. Okay, and then you can see it. Now they tell you to do it one more time, so I got a little bit more water. We're going to swirl that around, and we are going to have that in there. Okay, so we're just watching it filter. So you'll notice that I just have that sand in the filter paper, alright? And all of it has come through the water, or salt water I should probably clarify. So I have the sand in the filter paper, and my original beaker, which is right here. My original beaker has no sand in it. So I have my salt water and I have my sand. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this salt water, alright, and I'm just going to take this beaker right here, and then I'm going to walk over here back to my hot plate, and I'm going to stick that salt water on that hot plate. Okay, and I'm going to wait for the water to evaporate, and then I should just have my salt left. Okay, so it's just a waiting game with that one. So now, since I put that on the hot plate, I'm going to come back over here and I'm going to get my beaker 3. You see my beaker 3? And I'm going to take my sand that is in my filter paper and I'm going to put it in that beaker 3 by using that watch bottle. Okay? That deionized water bottle, and I'm going to spray this right down into this beaker. Okay? That's what I'm going to end up doing here. Okay, so I just sprayed the filter paper. I opened up the filter paper and I sprayed the squirt bottle down it. And you'll notice that all of my sand is right inside this beaker 3 that I know the mass of. So I have a little bit of water in there, and I have my sand from my sample. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over to the same hot plate over here, okay, and I'm going to stick the sand beaker now on that hot plate. And I'm going to wait for that water to evaporate. So I just have sand, and then the beaker on the left, when it evaporates, I'm just going to have salt. When that gets done, I will be back. When the water level gets low like that, it starts popping for the sand, and so then you put a watch glass on it because you don't want your sand to pop out. So as soon as I heard it popping, then what I did was I came over here and I put a watch glass on it. So we've got to keep the sand inside the beaker so that we can figure out how much we have at the end. Okay, so hopefully we didn't lose too much between now and when I put that watch glass on top. You can see how the water level is getting low in there, and it's going to start splattering just like the sand did. So I'm going to go get a watch glass and put it on top. So hopefully we are not going to lose any of our salt. Alright, but you can see how there's some white speckles. They're starting on the back of that beaker. And so we'll get that watch glass to work. So the splattering seems to have stopped. So I pulled the watch glass off. But you can tell there's condensation on the side of the beaker. So we can't take it off because it's going to have mass because there's still water because of that condensation. So we got to wait for that condensation on the outside of the beaker. It's actually on the inside, but to evaporate. What is almost good. So I'm going to put this. So that's our sand for you. Okay. Again, we're just going to wait for that little bit of condensation right up here. You can see it. We're going to wait for that to evaporate so that it doesn't add mass to our sample. Alright, so but we're almost done. Okay, so you can look at the sand one on the right, and you can see that it doesn't look like there's any condensation on that beaker. And if I was to pick it up, and you see how the sand is moving freely, which also is an indication that it is no longer wet. So I'm going to take that beaker there, and I'm just going to put it on the wire gauze right here on the hook, and I'm going to let that beaker cool down. So that's going to be beaker 3 that has just the sand in it. Okay, we're going to let that cool, and I'll move it by the balance so when it's cool we can take that measurement. We still are waiting on all that water to evaporate for the salt water. Okay, so we are waiting for that process. Alright, so this one is completely cool. You can see how that sand just flows. Alright, so we're going to go over to the balance here, and it's 0 and it's tiered out. So we're going to put that right on there, close the door. Okay, and then we're going to know that for the weight of beaker 3 and sand is 30.213. So we put that right there on spot 10. Okay, so really what we're waiting on is this. we're waiting for that last bit of water to evaporate. You can go ahead and do some of these calculations. And again, they have all the numbers set up for you, like add 5, 8, and 11 together. So you would just go 5, 8, and 11. And you just follow the steps, and it'll tell you. Hopefully, you guys will get close to 100%, and I haven't done the experiment completely wrong today. All right, so I will come back when that beaker is almost done. Okay, it looks like there's no more condensation. It is all dry. So I'm going to take this beaker, and I'm just going to put it on this wire bubbles. Okay, so we're going to let that cool down. I'm going to turn off this hot plate. We're going to let that cool. And when it cools down, we will get the mass of that beaker 2 with the salt in it. Okay, so now it is cool to the touch. I have 0, so I'm going to put that right on there. And then I'm going to look at the amount. So this is for my salt water. It's going to be 71,478. Okay, and so I just put that right there. Number 7, the weight of beaker 2 in sodium chloride, 71,478, and spot number 7. All right, so you have all the data that you need to do this experiment, and all the methods that we did to separate those 3 compounds of the mixture were all physical means, right? They're not chemical. We didn't break anything apart. We just separated the 3 components. All right, that's experiment 4.